journey, and I have the immense pleasure and honor to introduce you now to the next step. It's a kind of surprise for all of you. I'm going to give the floor to EU Deputy Munir Satouri, who joined us, and I will share later what NCP is doing on ICJO. Monsieur le député, je suis infiniment honorée de vous recevoir. Je n'ai pas dit à mes collègues ce que vous alliez dire, mais nous l'avions annoncé lors d'un événement sur lequel je reviendrai tout à l'heure en juin dernier. La mission diplomatique du Vanuatu était en ligne et c'est la nuit au Vanuatu. Ils sont quand même restés en ligne.
Is still online. I had a great pleasure of giving you the floor, Mr. Munir Satouri, and Green MEP, the European Parliament. Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you very much for asking me to take the floor in your encounter today and in your Zoom meeting. And I would like to talk to you about the about Seine-et-Marne, the Seine-et-Marne department. We have a way to be self-sufficient with regards to food. However, we suffer from a lot of pollution, air pollution, related to the Roissy airport, air pollution because of the motorways. We are a territory where the mobilization for future generations is really taking on all its sense. So I'm very happy to talk to you today. I want to congratulate the Normandy Chair for Peace and all of its participants for the work that has been accomplished. I will host an event in November at the EU Parliament in order to encourage a lot of states to most states, as many states as possible, to submit submissions within the scope and within the context of the Vanuatu resolution. As you know, that the France was convicted, was deemed to be responsible of not doing enough in terms of the climate justice, and this was the affaire du siècle. So France was found guilty of not doing enough, and we know that the advisory opinion given by the International Court of Justice will create some shockwaves, and we know that the work of the European Parliament works on all of this, as well as human rights, and there is no climate justice without the respect of human rights. So we have duties towards future generations, and we need to respect human rights. We must not forget the imbalance, the different inequities between the territories and the differences between the territories. You know, the United States is a major polluter, and then there is China and Russia. If we add Brazil, India, and you know, this is most of the emissions. So there are countries which are much more responsible than others, and the countries that have contributed the less to climate change. We need to pay attention so that these countries which have contributed the least to climate change are not at a disadvantage. So at EU level, we represent a certain percentage of emissions as well. And we had a war between Russia and Ukraine, which has which means that the ambitions, the climate ambitions, have been put at as a second point, as a secondary point. But we must not forget also all the social challenges, all the economic challenges. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and and I congratulate you on all the work that you have done. And I would like to, I will be very proud to participate and to host this event at the EU Parliament and to further your work. Thank you very much. Thank you, and see you soon, Mr. Mounir Satouri. So we will organize all together. So the diplomatic mission of the Republic of Vanuatu has already submitted a list of panelists and speakers, but this remains to be open. And we will invite also some cabinet members of the Ombudsman for Future Generations, Mrs. Rousseau. And so we have an event that we will build together. Nothing is set in stone yet, but we will work on it together. I would like to come back to some highlights of the Normandy Chair for Peace in relation to the climate justice line and the strategic genius of Alan Ware. Tony OPOSA had organized the first moot court with Tony OPOSA at the Supreme Court of Hawaii in 2017. Then in 2018, we met in the Netherlands, and Tony OPOSA really made a strong impression with his project of the advisory opinion in front of the World Court of Justice. And this is the visionary aspect, visionary genius of Tony OPOSA, and he convinced us to create the Normandy Chair for Peace. And this is how we created the Normandy Chair for Peace. And this was the central piece behind the creation of the Normandy Chair for Peace. This was Tony OPOSA and his idea of advisory opinion in front of the World Court of Justice. And Tony OPOSA in front of the CNRS, the French National Research Center, and other institutions such as the Caen University and the Normandy region and its vice president, François-Xavier Priolo, whom we owe so much. We owe him everything. We owe everything to François-Xavier Priolo, who gave us free rein to disseminate this message of peace with the earth and the message to promote the rights of future generations. So once the chair was created in December 2019, we went in September 2019, we went to the Climate COP in Madrid with Tony OPOSA, and Tony OPOSA organized a side event on referring the matter of climate change in front of the International Court of Justice and requesting an advisory opinion. And with Tony OPOSA, we then went to New York, and in New York, Tony OPOSA went to see all of the major universities such as Pace University, Columbia, the Center for Climate Justice, Harvard. We went to the University of Harvard to present this communication. We went to the Boston School of Economics, and he mobilized people. He mobilized the most important schools in the United States. And then after we went to the Madrid Climate COP, an entire event was dedicated to the subject, and then the instructions of Tony OPOSA was clear. We had to give youth the leadership of that initiative, and we were then only there to support youth and that youth initiative. We were there to support the publication, to support with translations, and the last one I proposed was in Arabic, because Arabic was a language that was put to the side. We were there to support with travels, and we were there to support that initiative. So we were there to support in the backstage, behind the scenes. And one of the highlights I'm very proud of with Alan Ware, and maybe Alan will talk more about it, this is because we organized together in front of the United Nations, at the seat of United Nations, we organized a high-level event with the diplomatic mission of the Vanuatu, the permanent mission of Vanuatu and New York, as well as the permanent mission of Costa Rica to the UN in New York. We then created a highlight that would cover the strategies and the topics that we discussed before with the referral of the ICJ. So Aline, I would like to ask you to take the floor and take some time to respond to the questions and to handle the questions and answer sessions.
Thank you very much, Emily. And with regards to the event that we organised in New York in June, the key area that we were focusing on, or key areas we were focusing on to bring into the International Court of Justice case on climate change was the developing law protecting future generations, and also the interrelationship between this process and the UN Summit of the Future. And these are two things which are very important. So the rights of future generations is something which Normandy Chair for Peace has had an expertise, and particularly Professor GAILLARD, who is one of the world's experts on the rights of future generations. And in seeing that, you know, over the last 2 decades, the international law protecting the rights of future generations has developed considerably. But even back when we were taking the case in the International Court of Justice against nuclear weapons in '95, and the decision came in '96, the court was already looking at the rights of future generations. And you can see that in both the deliberations of the court and also in the dissenting opinion from Judge Wedemartre. But in the deliberations, the final decision of the court mentioned a number of times the rights of future generations and how events or behaviors that impact on future generations, like nuclear weapons, and the court affirmed that the destructive impact of nuclear weapons cannot be contained in time nor space. When there is something like this which impacts on future generations, there is a responsibility to prevent this from happening in order to protect future generations. So this principle has already been played out in the court, and the ICJ case on nuclear weapons, the advisory opinion on the legality of the threat of use of nuclear weapons, is not the only case that the court has discussed the issues which impact on future generations and the responsibilities to protect future generations. Here we have now an issue, climate change, which is, of course, impact of future generations. The law has developed a lot more. There is an opportunity to consolidate that, to clarify it, and to bring in not just the negative obligations, but also remedies, which again, I'm going back to what Professor Robinson says. The purpose of this case is not just to say what is bad, it's bad pumping more carbon into the atmosphere and hurting the climate, but how are we going to get out of this mess? And what are the obligations? You know, and those obligations are primarily on states, but not just on states. They're actually also on other authorities, whether it be city authorities, regional authorities, corporations. The obligations are universal. And those obligations are to ensure, adopt policies, processes that will remove this threat to the future generations of climate change. Now, as Professor Robinson says, that doesn't happen immediately. It's going to be happening over time, but this is a really important part of the case, and that's why the legal work that Normandy Chair for Peace has been doing, in particular Professor GAILLARD, on the rights of future generations, the work that Judge Wedemartre was doing on rights of future generations when he was a member of the court is so important, and I think it's going to be expanded a lot. And that's something which we're taking forward into the court. And then the connection with the Summit of the Future is that the court may not have come to its decision by the time of the Summit of the Future. That will be September 2024, but it'll be a long way in the deliberation process. So already there'll be a lot of things identified in the submissions, in the counter memorials to the submissions, and if the oral hearings have happened by then, also in the oral hearings, So the law that has been developed, clarified, advanced in this case should swing into the summit of the future to ensure there's a much stronger political imperative for adopting policies at the global level. Now, we know that the summit of the future itself will have difficulty adopting a lot of concrete things because it's based on consensus, but it will provide the opportunity for like-minded states to be coming forward. You know, there are already like-minded states, for example, the Beyond Oil and Gas Coalition, that could be elevated through both this case and through the Summit of the Future. So that's why we're seeing this court case is not just in isolation, it's associated with the other opportunities to take these forward. And I think that also is part of a response to the question that Rebecca asked, which is, you know, what else is going to happen? What else is there in place? Structured mechanisms to ensure that strategic engagement continues throughout the policy cycle, not just to ensure a decent decision from the court, but that will have an impact. So I've mentioned a couple: the Summit of the Future, the importance of parliamentarians. Of course, what happens when the court gives its decision is it gives its decision primarily to the UN General Assembly, because it was the UN General Assembly that requested the opinion. So the UN General Assembly will have a responsibility to respond to that. And we need to come in as civil society again with our governments to ensure that the UN General Assembly follow-up to the decision from the International Court of Justice is going to be strong, is going to be constructive, is going to include, you know, aspects of remedies, and that will help feed into the other UN processes, whether it's the COP processes, other summits, the sustainable development goals and their implementation, etc. That's in a sense my response to those questions. I might just swing back to our panelists to see if they've got any closing comments, because I think we're coming near to the end of time, including any further comments with regards to Rebecca's question. And maybe I go first to Yule, if Yule is still here. Yes, I see Yule. Yule, do you have a closing comment, including a response to Rebecca's question?
Yeah, thank you, Alan. No, just a big thank you to everyone. And I think earlier I hadn't thanked Emily and the NCP for the invitation to join today. I really appreciate, yeah, that you have always listened to us, invited my colleagues and myself to events, and really worked with us eye to eye. I think it's such a, yeah, thank you for that question. I think that's something that we definitely struggle with too every day. Also seeing, yeah, I think kind of law, this very permanent bigger thing, and how can different policy ideas fit into that. So I think we look forward to working with civil society organizations, trying to find ways to, when it comes, how can this be useful to you? So how can my colleague Vishal from the Pacific Students, he always says everyone can find a home within the AO, and then how can this home be suitable for everyone once it has come out as well. So thank you, Ellen, for highlighting these different events where this can take place. But we've also always said we're not trying to kind of create a parallel process, but just support work that's already ongoing. So in kind of policy work that you're already doing or advocacy, how can the AO help or propel that forward, the work that you do, provide additional arguments, additional fuel maybe. Yeah, so but I think that's a work in progress for sure. And yeah, thank you for asking that question. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, thank you, Yule. And Professor Robinson, closing comments and or response to Rebecca's question.
Well, thank you very much. One thing that when the advisory opinion comes out, we can begin to do at once is call for the abolition of all subsidies, governmental financial subsidies for fossil fuels. That can be done instantly. You just need a national legislation, or to have a court rule that they are unconstitutional as a violation of people's rights. And then the subsidy could be redirected into adaptation and helping those who are harmed by climate change. It is absolutely absurd that we subsidize fossil fuels right now all around the world, and that should end. So I do think there are some things that can happen soon or quickly, even though the transfer out of fossil fuels will have to take a little while as a mechanical or a practical measure. But I too want to join in thanking everyone. this is a relay race. When we think about future generations and our ancestors, we are in a relay race, passing the baton on from one generation to the next. And it's been great fun to be part of a generation that's passing itself away. But we did do a lot in my generation in building environmental law and building universities and so on. And now we have to get rid of climate change. It won't be anything we get rid of quickly, but we will learn how to do it. And so the Normandy Chair for Peace and the region of Normandy were very important in this relay race because they had a moment in time. As Emily has described it, Tony OPOSA was very brilliant in seizing this moment in time and realizing that by working with youth around the world through the moot courts and others, by the summer school, by working with organized youth, the wonderful work that Yuli has done, and also Nicole Ponce and all the other youth. This is part of that relay race, and the Normandy Chair for Peace and the French National Research Center, CNRS, and all those who made it possible are part of an important transition in history. And I want to thank them and everything they've done. So any follow-up, I'm glad to be able to follow up offline with anyone who has questions, and we can move on. Thank you very much, Alan. And Alan, thank you. You've been great.
Thank you very much, Professor Robinson. Nishdan, you have a couple of closing comments?
Absolutely. Great honor again. Just to add to Professor Christina, it was great to hear from her and the World Commission for Environmental Law from the IUCN and their processes of adapting written submissions for the ICJ-AO. There is a reference there to ITLAWs and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and European Court of Human Rights. But also, I think you and others are privy to many, many wonderful achievements, including the judgment of the 14th of August from state of Montana, where young people both successfully and satisfactorily realized that the state of Montana has a responsibility now, both with regard to getting rid of fossil fuels, but also right to a healthy environment. So these are really shifts and momentums adding to, I believe, higher consciousness on our responsibilities to each other and the planet and to future generations. And again, congratulations to the Normandy Chair for Peace and the wonderful, inspirational people behind it. And I'm sure, as Professor Robinson said, as the baton gets passed on, it will inspire generations to come. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Nishan. And just before I pass back to Professor Gaillard to close this session, and I think close the event, I think this is the last session for the event, I just want to add, my thanks and commendations to the incredible leadership from Normandy Chair for Peace, from Tony OPOSA, from Professor Robinson, but particularly from Emily Gaillard, who has done so well in bringing key political visionaries, legal experts, young voices, academics, students, activists, in the field, a range, an incredible mix, UN officials, incredible mix of people to make this work very real. It's not just studying these issues in the ivory tower, but is engaging the thinking and the academics behind this, the legal thought behind this in specific policies, specific processes and initiatives. It's really been an incredible impact that Normandy Chair for Peace has had. There's a wealth of thinking, articles, events, and that you can see on the Normandy Chair for Peace website. So I commend Normandy Chair for Peace in particular. It's been incredibly valuable for me. I've learned so much, and also appreciated very much the capacity to engage and learn from incredible people. So a big thank you to Normandy Chair for Peace for leading this process. I think this is sort of wrapping up a whole field of work. So I'm going to pass over now to Professor Emily Gaillard to close the event and say her final words about Normandy Chair for Peace and her experience with it. Professor Gaillard.
Thank you so much, Aline. Thank you so much to Professor Robinson, to Neshan. It's a great pleasure to meet you. To Julie, I think we created a family, a worldwide family, and it's just a start. And NCP started a fire, and it has to follow. So I will switch into French because I can express myself better in French. Donc, nous arrivons au terme
So
de
we
ces
are
3
now
jours
closing
de temps
these
fort de clôture de
these
la
3
chaire d'excellence
day
Normandie pour la paix.
closing highlights
Je
of the
rappelle que
Normandy
cette
Chair
chaire
for Peace.
d'excellence Normandie
I would
pour la
like to
paix a été
remind you that
créée à
this
l'initiative de la région
Normandy
Normandie,
Chair for
c'est-à-dire qu'elle a
Peace
été
was
intégralement
was
financée par la
created at
région
the
Normandie
initiative
pour
of the
porter ce
Normandy
message de
region. So it
paix.
was
Et
totally
nous a laissé, nous a
entirely financed by
sélectionnés
the
sur le
Normandy
message de
region.
paix avec la
And
terre et de
they selected
promotion
us for
avec les
our
droits des
message of
générations
peace
futures.
with the
La
earth
région
and the
Normandie
promotion of the
forte d'un
rights of future
héritage qui
generations.
est une
The Normandy
mémoire,
region is
en raison de la
strong
Seconde Guerre
with its
mondiale,
heritage, the heritage of the Second
voit
World
ses
War,
vétérans disparaître
with
les uns après les autres. Et
and
donc,
the
tenez,
Second World
depuis
War
2019,
veterans are
à tenir
disappearing
ces
one after the other,
forums
and we
mondiaux
really
Normandie pour
wanted
la paix qui
to
d'année
host
en année
these
deviennent de
Normandy for
plus en
Peace
plus importants,
forums,
se nourrissent
which
et
are
qui d'année en année
growing
créent de nouvelles
from one
initiatives
year
et
to the next,
fédèrent
which
de
create
nombreux prix Nobel
new
de la paix.
initiatives and
Je
which
tiens à
federate
remercier
new
infiniment
Nobel
la
Peace
région Normandie
Prizes.
pour
I want to
François-Xavier
really
Priolo,
thank
vice-président de la région
the Normandy
Normandie, qui a
region
eu
and
la
particularly
vision
the
de
Vice
cette
President of the
chaire,
Normandy
pour sa
region,
confiance,
François-Xavier Priolo,
pour
who
m'avoir aussi
really understood the
étroitement
vision of the Normandy
associé à
Chair
la
for
direction
Peace
scientifique de cette
and
chaire.
for
Je
also
remercie tout particulièrement
associating
Monsieur
me
Antoine
with
Petit,
to this
président du CNRS,
to the
du Centre
scientific
national
committee
pour
of
la
the Normandy
recherche
Chair for Peace. I would
scientifique,
like to
qui nous a reçus en
thank the
2019 avec Tony
CNRS,
OPOSA lors de
the
lancement de la
French
chaire
National
ici
Research
en Normandie.
Council,
Je
and
remercie infiniment
its
l'Université de
director.
Caen
I would like to
et
thank the University of
l'ensemble
Caen
des institutions, que
and
ce soit le
all of the
président, les
bodies and
différents
institutions,
vice-directeurs,
the
qui se sont tous
president and the
notamment
different
déplacés
vice
ici pour
directors
accueillir
who
et
came
ouvrir
here
l'université
to
d'été de la
welcome
chaire
and
d'excellence et qui ont, malgré le
welcome all the
changement donc de
participants
mandat,
during the summer
été
school
réactifs et nous ont
and who were
apporté
very
leur soutien.
reactive and
Je
who brought
remercie
their
toutes celles et
support.
ceux qui
I
se
would
sont
like to thank
déplacés en
all of the
Normandie, que ce soit
people
aussi
who
les
traveled to
caciques, ces chefs
Normandy,
autochtones
for
du
example,
Brésil
the
en
indigenous
délégation
chiefs
avec Planète
from
Amazon.
Brazil,
Je
a
remercie
delegation
les
with
étudiants de
the
l'université
Association
d'été.
Planet
J'ai été
Amazon. I would
très
like to
heureuse
thank the
et émue de
students
revoir ce
who
documentaire
participated in the
préparé
summer school. I
avec
was very happy
passion par Moussadak
to watch
Sultan,
again the
qui n'a pas compté
documentary
ses heures et qui a
prepared
fait
by
3
Moussadak
documentaires. Le
Sultan,
premier a été
who
diffusé hier à
prepared
l'occasion
3
de la
documentaries.
restitution de nos
The
travaux sur
other
la boussole des
one
possibles de Mireille
we
Delmas-Marty.
watched
Le
the other
second a
one
été diffusé
yesterday
aujourd'hui sur
with regards to Mireille
l'université
Delmas-Marty
d'été
and
de
the
la chaire
Compass of
d'excellence. Et
Possibilities.
le
And
troisième
there
fera
is a
un
third
résumé
one,
de ces
which
4
is a
ans qu'on
summary
souhaitait à
of the
l'origine
4
de faire pour
years of
aujourd'hui,
work of the
mais
Normandy
je
Chair
me
for
suis
Peace. We
accordé un
wanted
petit
to
peu aussi du temps de repos.
make
Nous avons donc
to
passé 3
broadcast it
jours
today, but it
à
was not possible
revoir
given to time
ensemble
constraints. We
comment la
also
chaire d'excellence,
wanted
non seulement par sa structure qui
to
n'est pas
see and
hiérarchique,
to
on voit bien qu'il y a 3 co-directions
review
scientifiques,
how we see
des
there are
couleurs
3
différentes, des textures
different
de diplomatie
scientific
scientifique différentes,
branches, 3
des
different
attachements à
visions in
former des
terms
avocats,
of
des magistrats,
scientific
ou encore
diplomacy,
des
you know,
défenseurs
the
des droits de l'homme,
way
on l'a
we
vu
can
hier.
train
C'est une
magistrates,
recherche qui
human
a
rights
été
defenders.
imaginée, la
This
feuille
was
de
a
route avec
research.
professeur
The
Robinson et
roadmap
Tony
was
OPOSA à
imagined by
l'université
Professor
de
Robinson
Pace
and
aux
Tony Oposa
États-Unis.
at
Et
Pace
ensemble, nous étions autour
University
d'une table
in
pendant
the
3
United
jours, nous
States.
avons
So for 3
brainstormé, nous
days,
avons
we were
imaginé
around the
chacune des
table
lignes de
and we
recherche. Et
brainstormed and
toutes
we
ces lignes de
imagined each
recherche
line of research.
étaient quand même
And all of these
ont
research
toutes été menées
lines,
à bien, vont donner
all
lieu
of
à la
them,
publication d'environ une quinzaine
there
d'ouvrages qui
will
sont
be
tous
the
actuellement
publication of about
en
15
échange avec
books
l'éditeur. Donc, vous
following
allez
all of
encore
these
entendre parler
research
de la chaire
lines.
Normandie pour la
So
paix,
you
même
will
avec,
still
après sa
hear
clôture.
about the
Les
Normandy Chair
ouvrages
for
vont
Peace
tous
even after
être
its
publiés
closing,
entre
because
septembre
the books
et
will all be published
mars-avril
between
2024.
September
Nous avons donc
and March
une
or April
collection très large
2024. So
d'ouvrages
we
que nous
will have
laissons
a wide
justement pour
range of
l'avenir, une
wide
collection d'ouvrages qui seront
collection
durables.
and a wide
Nous
range
avons
of
vu donc, nous avons
publications for the
élaborer
future.
des lignes de
We have
recherche sur le droit
elaborated and
en train
developed
de se
these
faire. C'est le
research
credo
lines
du
on
Collège de France.
law in the
Enseigner la
making.
science en train de se
This
faire.
is the
Et je
creed
pense que la
of the
spécificité de la
Collège de
chaire Normandie
France,
pour la paix a été
teaching
aussi d'aller
science
sur des
in the
thèmes
making.
innovants.
And we were looking at innovative topics, you know, the legal indicators presented by Michel Prieur with publications that are in open access on the website. We have also economic indicators to talk about the economic good health of states. And we need to check whether environmental law is really enforced by the states. So this work is available in open source in French, English, and Spanish. We have also placed this Normandy Chair for Peace under the prism of decolonialism, decoloniality. There is a need to decolonize our thinking, our systems. And I was thinking whether the World Commission on Environmental Law, the IUCN, or maybe the College of Indigenous Peoples at the IUCN could be involved. So in this momentum, in this dynamic with regards to Indigenous peoples, some great work was achieved because we actually organized meetings with Indigenous people, but also because we are trying to organize some pedagogical kits with the students. There was a tremendous work conducted by Leslie Clou, not in 4 years, but in just a year and a half. So our meeting came quite late, but she really achieved so much in just a year and a half. And I would like to thank her and commend her work because she was able to organize an event within the setting of the United Nations during the last Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And I would like to thank all of these participants and active supporters. And I wanted to talk also about the bioethics line, which I co-led together with Amandine Cayol and Bénédicte Bévière-Boyer. We worked on transhumanism, transanimalism, and trans-earth geoengineering, and we showed how this research, the search for purely technological vision was actually breaking our link, our bond with nature. So this research was extremely fruitful. All of the videos of the webinars on the symposiums and the different conferences are online, together with the books and publications. And with regards to geoengineering, it was not easy to organize, and the Commission on International Law at the UN delivered a report saying that intending or hinting that geoengineering could harm humanity. So we are now in a process of dynamic of a transformation of law. So when we talk about line number 1, we talk about the transformation of laws, the laws of nature, and also animal rights, with an elevation of our level of consciousness. And this was work done by Aloïse Ken, who organized 2 international conferences on the sentience of animals. And she also published some books on the subject, some proceedings, the conference proceedings, and I wish her all the best with her career. And Professor Michel Prieur tried to do some scientific diplomacy with the WHO on the One Health concept, and the chair published all of its work in French, English, and Spanish, and everything was sent to the delegates. Professor Alexandra Aragao is a professor of law, and she actually presented her work on innovation, responsible innovation and research. And we welcomed her, and we also looked at the final proceedings. And in fact, the Normandy Chair for Peace itself is an experimentation of what an academic chair can bring in terms of legal innovations and responsibility. Because when we talk about peace with the earth, when we talk about the rights of future generations, all of this needs to be aligned with a very respectful attitude. Of course, it is a transgenerational right. It is a trans-species right. So we need to disconnect this from the human species. I mean, our future depends on the future of other species, and this is also a scientific revolution. We are at the heart of this scientific revolution, and we are in a historical momentum. I know that among you, some of you are a little bit sad because it will be the closing of this Normandy Chair for Peace. This was a 4-year project, but we are going through a historical moment of time. We have on the website of the chair the compass of possibilities, some materials on the compass of possibilities, which is the work done by Mireille Delmas-Marty, who talks about globality, about an appeased type of globality, and it needs to go through the decoloniality of law. And just to echo what Christina Voigt was saying, maybe the Normandy Chair for Peace will maybe be presented one day as a good story amongst these good story movement, which is dear to Tony OPOSA's heart. So I would like to come back to Professor Nick Robinson. A tribute was paid to Professor Robinson yesterday, research based on a high-level scientific diplomacy. You know, there was the organization of events behind closed doors or public events, missions abroad, like Stockholm Plus 50 event. The event he organized in the Museum in Marseille before the World Congress of the IUCN. This was a great highlight, and the Normandy Chair for Peace provided some support and resources, but this is a way to handle all of the research lines of the chair, and this was an incredible highlight, a very boosting highlight. We also we had a highlight in Mohonk Mountain House. This was great moment. I think Professor Robinson has this mission of sowing seeds for the future, and each event beyond the high-level character and the human perspective has the goal of initiating a virtuous circle. So that is how I was able to meet with the Dean of the University of Peace of the United Nations, and I would like to thank Narinder Kakkar for his work and his support. And you know, we could also support an Erasmus Mundus programs or other masters, the creation of other masters programs. We understand that the time is ripe now. I don't know if you feel the same in your countries, but in France, students and engineers in major engineering schools, they are criticizing, they're denouncing the fact that they have not been trained in respecting the planet. So maybe it is time to create a big school, a big institute where we don't train students in transitions, but now the time is right to actually train students in, you know, ecological engineering, you know, rights of future generations, what Tony OPOSA suggested, to study economic sciences of conservation, protection, and the restoration of nature. And this is the ecological paradigm. I was talking about it on the social media. There is geoengineering, of course, on the side, but ecological engineering also exists. And I want here to talk about my father, who spent his life working on renewable energy in the 1980s and in the year 1983 or 1984, together with the Queen of Lesotho, with the Minister for Lesotho, he created a small methanization plant, very low-tech plants, and he was asking peasants to put the cow dung in the soil, and he was placing some clay elements and some tubing, and this methanization plant still works today. So you see, ecological engineering exists, and my best friend at high school, she invented a process to to stop wood from rotting with a mixture of oil and lemon. I will not give you the complete formula because it is a secret. So my message is the following: beyond law, there is a huge work to be done to imagine teaching into sustainable living. And there are, we can go even further to transform human beings, to transform animals, transform the earth. But at the same time, these two narratives will be opposed one against the others. And if we want to keep our future open, we need to have teaching institutions and training institutions that train students into this transformation. So I would like to thank also the National Bar Council, because it adopted a motion on the rights of future generations. We worked with them for more than a year and a half. We drafted this report together with lawyers of the National Bar Council under the presidency with Sophie Ferry as a chairwoman. They didn't count the hours. I would like to thank Anne Eastwood, the Commissioner for Human Rights in Monaco. I would like to thank her for her commitment towards rights of future generations, because she was able to gather together the Declaration of Ombudsman, the Declaration of Monaco for the rights of future generations. I would like to thank also Antonio Benjamin, who opened the doors of the Global Judicial Institute several times to share the work on the rights of future generation and to share his analysis on his legal analysis. I would like to thank also Mr. Bisson, who was the former attaché in Normandy, in the Embassy of Normandy, who really supported supported us a lot when there were some foreign events, and who supported the Normandy Chair for Peace. I would like to thank also Sabine Vermilla, who is in charge of the cooperation with the French Embassy in Pakistan, for her support during the summer school of the Normandy Chair for Peace, for her enthusiasm, for her support during the stay of Mosaddeq Sultan in Normandy, and for her invitation for the next visit in person in Pakistan in December, next December. So I would like to end, and I would like to thank Professor Nick Robinson, who, together with Tony OPOSA, was an incredible mentor. I think this was a great opportunity that does not take place twice in a lifetime, to work with such mentors. Professor Robinson had a great intelligence, an additional capacity, an inspiration. You're a model in the way, in your attitude, and I really want to pass on to use the way you work. Thank you very much to Tony OPOSA,
le grand plaisir de parcourir la planète, mais aussi
whom we had the
d'échanger en
great
joie sur
pleasure
différents sujets et sur les droits des
of
générations
working
futures.
with
Et pour les mots de la fin,
traveling.
je dirais
We
en
traveled
citant
with him
Tony
and we
OPOSA,
exchanged with him, and
there
it was
is
a
no
great
limit
pleasure.
to what
And to
you can
quote Tony
achieve
OPOSA,
if
there
you
is
don't
no
want to take
limit
credit.
to what
Clap de fin
you
pour
can
la chaire
achieve if you
d'excellence
don't want to
Normandie
take
pour
the
la paix.
credit.
Je
So
vous
this is the
remercie
end
infiniment.
of the Normandy Chair
Prenez
for
soin de vous.
Peace.
Be well.
Please
And
take
see
care
you
of
somewhere
yourself
else.
and see
Take
you
care.
soon and somewhere else. Thank you very much. Take care.
Hi, James. Bye.